All right, folks, we are here back live with Kevin Ryan. Phone calls on 9/11 Truth, government-sponsored terror, you name it, coming up in the next segment at 1-800-259-9231. I see Betty, Don, and many others that want to speak to our guest, Kevin Ryan, formerly with Underwriting Laboratories, an engineer who found out about all this stuff. And look, I mean, you can't, dealing with reality, you can't just say, well, it's too scary to know it's an inside job. I'm just going to say it's not true. I mean, that is a lot to deal with. And I've had to deal with it. You know, I had to tell you about the attacks before they happened. So the feds are going to go after the World Trade Center. I could see them on TV preparing the public. I mean, it doesn't take a mathematician to understand this stuff, but here we are. So Kevin, continuing with You're Awakening the Evidence, NIST is all over the map now. And then that really key research you've done on the thermate with this Dr. Stephen Jones and others.
Right. So Dr. Jones came on the scene in 2005 and was just a very strong scientific, credible scientific speaker in terms of what he was finding. And since then, Dr. Jones and myself and others have proven beyond question, I think, and others before us, that the towers and World Trade Center 7 were brought down with explosives. There's no question about that. The additional information was the development of the thermite or thermate theory from Dr. Jones, and that's because he was able to find residues and test them and show that they were chemically identical to the residues from thermite explosions.
And by the way, separately, the government's own reports buried in the data was the sulfidation and other chemical interactions that he had separately found in his own research. So a lot of what you guys have done is seconded in the real government research, not just the official spin they put out.
Absolutely. It's supported by official reports of various kinds. But then we started looking into what are called nanothermites, and these are more explosive versions of thermite that are built around components that are on the nano scale, so nano aluminum and sometimes also nanometallic powders, metallic oxides that are mixed with the nano aluminum. And there's one reason that these are very useful, in my view. They ignite at much lower temperatures. They are explosive, very much so. And also, they create fire, as I suggested, where fire would not otherwise have existed. They're also applicable to this situation, in that if you look at where the fireproofing upgrades and the elevator work was done in the 2 years before 9/11, you find out that the floors where fireproofing upgrade was done match up very, very well, almost exactly, if not exactly, with the floors of impact and fire and failure, or so-called failure, in the towers. And so that
shows massive forethought and just sickening premeditated nature.
Really, and so that just, it becomes an easy path almost when you look at that and you say, well, very strong part of the theory now is that nanothermites which are sprayable, can be coated. They're coatings.
And the workers even think they're putting on new fireproofing.
I think it's very possible that the idea is that they could be told that it's intumescent paint, which is a fireproofing type of paint, or other types of fireproofing materials. And even the Port Authority's consultant, Burrow Happold, an engineering company from the British, from the United Kingdom, suggested to them at the time when they're doing these upgradings that they use alternative materials. So they didn't explain what those alternative materials are.
And it would help if it was a spook building with every major federal intelligence agency in it, and it magically was the government's command bunker.
Yeah, World Trade Center 7 had some very interesting tenets, that's for sure.
CIA, FBI, Defense Intelligence.
Yeah, so we look more into these nanothermites, and I've been making them, actually. Been making them now. I made a couple of formulations that were published by Lawrence Livermore National Labs, and I've been examining a lot of the World Trade Center dust samples and looking in surprise, I guess, at how similar these materials look when you look at them under a microscope.
And then NIST, and we're going to come back in a long segment, and I want you to break this down slowly, sir. It just so happens that NIST has been acting like they don't know what you're talking about, but they happen to have some nanothermite experts working there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing who the president appointed to lead NIST during the investigation. We can talk about that when you're ready.
Yeah. Well, since there's such explosive thermite experts with NASA, why don't we... I mean, have you had a chance to talk face-to-face with these nice people? Because I know you go to some of these events. I want to hear about this with Kevin Ryan, the engineer, who's bringing down the New World Order lie. Stay with us. This is so important, folks. Call your friends. He's with Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. He works with Dr. Stephen Jones and others. There's several different organizations, but we'll put up some of the websites on screen if you want to learn more. You were trying to give out some websites before we went to break, Kevin Ryan, for people to look at the explosive nanothermite you've made that mirrors the government programs. We know the Pentagon's worked with this, NASA's worked with this, and the folks at NIST should know all about it, because just so happens of only maybe 10 experts in the world, you've got a couple of them that just so happen to be given the investigation. So I would imagine they want to work with you, since this is their line, their specialty, their signature. We know they want to help America capture the terrorist. So Kevin, continue with the spheres themselves, and then, lo and behold, top experts in the world involved running the cover-up, investigation. Kevin Ryan, please continue, because we're really getting close now, aren't we?
I think so. And if you go to the Journal of 9/11 Studies, I published a paper, one of my own papers was published there, called The Top 10 Connections Between NIST and Nanothermites. And it steps through the top 10 connections.
Give that site out for folks. We're going to put it on screen.
It's the Journal of 911studies.com, Journal of 911studies.com.
All right, we've got it on screen. Please continue.
And I think the paper is from July of this year, but it steps through an explanation of nanothermites, and it talks about how NIST was working with Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories as early as 1999. I believe earlier than that, but that documentation is important. But you can get all the references from this paper. You don't have to take my word for it. Step through it and see that NIST is very closely working on nanothermites. And they had people like Foreman Williams, who is their lead engineer on their advisory committee, and also is the biggest engineering expert for popular mechanics. And he is an expert on just these sorts of materials.
So he's the Hearst Publishing expert.
Yeah, I suppose. That's Popular Mechanics is a Hearst publication.
Same folks that said you supply the pictures, I'll supply the war.
Yeah, the yellow journalism. So,
we always joke and say, in the encyclopedia, next to the word dumbass, there's a picture of you. But, literally, in the encyclopedia, next to yellow journalism is a picture of them.
Yeah. So, a lot of people still believe it, what they say, and that's just a matter of being able to close your mind enough to buy what you were already going to buy.
Well, they're clearly operatives. Please continue.
Well, there's Science Applications International, which is a very large engineering consulting and other defense consulting company that was very heavily involved in the NIST investigation, and they're experts on this sort of material. They also first investigated the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and it was their analysis that kind of produced those responsible, the official story. They were also responsible for helping out with the security upgrades at the World Trade Center in the late 1990s. So this Science Applications International, SAIC, company is connected in every possible way. They're connected through their former employees Jerome Hauer and Stephen Hatfill to a number of things like the anthrax incidents and the Rudy Giuliani administration. But these directors of NIST are most interesting to me. One of them is Arden Beament, who is a materials expert and metallurgist. So, this is right up his alley. He's a former Deputy Secretary of Defense and former director of DARPA's Materials Office, former executive at TRW, And there's just all sorts of connections. Battelle, he's a director at Battelle, which is an organization that manages the national laboratories, including Fort Detrick and Lawrence Livermore. And
all these thermate experts, they're just, directing giant companies, but they are coming in to help with the 9/11 investigation. Isn't that nice of them?
Absolutely. October 2001, right after the attacks, is when George W. Bush nominated Beament to be the head of NIST. When Beament was ready to move on, which is a few years later, they Bush nominated Hratch Semerjian to be his replacement. He was the director of NIST Chemical Division, and he is somebody who is a nanothermite expert and wrote 10 papers with the world's leading nanothermite expert, Michael Zachariah, used to be a NIST employee as well.
Wow, you'd think that this is like a class get-together of world thermite experts.